So I've said it before in this class, and I'll say it several times. One of the cool things about microeconomics is once you learn one side of the story, the other side of the story is just the flip side. And we're going to see that here in the second screencast for Chapter 6, thinking about producer surplus. So consumer surplus was when you pay for the good must be worth more to you than what you paid, and that difference is the surplus. Again, I go to Ike's 11 Sandwiches. I give them, what, $15 for a sandwich. I don't know what they cost. They're kind of expensive. But it must be the case that that sandwich is worth more than $15 to me. So my surplus as a consumer is whatever my willingness to pay was. Probably not much more than that, what they're charging, but obviously I am buying it, so it must be giving me some surplus. The producer surplus is looking at it from Ike's point of view, right? So if Ike sells me the sandwich, it must be the case that his cost to making that sandwich in terms of labor and inputs and machines and everything he has must be less than what I'm paying him, because otherwise he wouldn't sell me the sandwich. He would be losing money. So right now we're going to call this idea the producer surplus. You can probably think that it's going to be very related to profits when we talk about that later on, but right now we're just going to call it producer surplus. So let's walk through this. So here are our three characters again, except this time they're going to be sellers. They're going to be selling tutoring services, all right? So Beanie has a willingness to sell tutoring services at $30 an hour. Mitch has a willingness to do it for $20 an hour, and Frank the Tank will tutor for $10 an hour. So their willingness to sell is determined by things like their direct cost and their opportunity cost. Don't forget, we economists take this opportunity cost thing pretty seriously, so we're always going to have it as part of either a producer or consumer's calculation. It's what is that next best option? That's the opportunity cost, all right, giving that up, all right? So the question is, if the market price for tutoring was $25, which sellers will choose to tutor, all right? Well, if the market price is $25, well, Mitch is going to tutor because he's getting more than his willingness to sell, and Frank the Tank is going to tutor because he's getting he's getting paid more than his willingness. Beanie, however, would not. He will only do it for $30 or more. He won't do it for $30. All right. So producer surplus is that difference between the willingness to sell a good and the price you actually receive for that good. So at a price of $25, just like we said, Mitch and Frank decide to tutor. Frank will get $15 of producer surplus. If he can get someone to pay him $25 when he was willing to do it for $10, he gets a producer surplus of $15 per hour. Mitch, it's a little closer for Mitch. Mitch was willing to do it for $20, but he's getting $25, so he gets a producer surplus of $5 an hour. Beanie, of course, doesn't tutor because the price is below his willingness to sell. All right, he would be losing from his point of view if he were to tutor at $25 an hour. So in our models, we assume people don't do those sorts of things. They don't do things that make them worse off. All right, now we can look at this graphically. We can put in the supply curve for these three guys. And again, we're going to put in their willingness to sell. Frank's willingness to sell is $10. Mitch's willingness to sell is $20. And Beanie's willingness to sell is up here at $30. So now we can look at different prices, different possible market prices, and see what their producer surplus looks like. So here at $15 an hour, only Frank is going to supply tutoring services. He's the only one for which the market price is above his willingness to sell. All right. So Frank's producer surplus here is $5. His willingness to sell is $10. The market price is $15. So that difference again is his producer surplus. All right. The other two guys are not going to sell because the price is too low. It's below their willingness to sell. What about at $25 an hour? Well, at $25 an hour, Frank's producer surplus is $15. Again, his willingness to sell is $10, and if it's $25, the market price, he gets a huge surplus of $15 per hour. This also brings another person on board who now the price is above their willingness to sell, and that's Mitch. And so Mitch's willingness to sell is $20, and the market price here is $25. So Mitch is willing to sell this good, and he receives a producer surplus of $5. So in the next screencast, we're going to put these two sides of the scissors together and look at supply and demand and producer and consumer surplus.